As we approach the 3-year anniversary of the war in Ukraine, the global spotlight continues to shine on this ongoing conflict. Now, with recent developments, including U.S. Russia talks in Saudi Arabia, Europe's defense package for Ukraine, and controversial statements from President Trump, tensions remain high. Now, joining me now to discuss all of this is Wojciech Przybylski, the editor-in-chief of Visegrad Insight, Respublika Foundation. Wojciech, welcome to the program. Thanks for being with us here.
Thanks for having me. Hello.
Let's talk about here first with Keith Kellogg's visit in Ukraine today. I mean, he emphasized that the United States recognizes the importance of security guarantees for Ukraine. What do you think this means for the future of the prospect of these peace talks, if that's what we can call them, between Russia and Ukraine?
Well, that's definitely a lifeline to hold on to from the perspective of Europe, from the perspective of Ukraine. To see this is continuously the key U.S. policy that guarantees independence from the aggression of Russia. The trouble with that is that it's one man against many other words coming from the U.S. administration that sometimes raise serious doubts about the intentions coming from the top of the White House.
How did we even get here, Wojciech, that suddenly all these talks that happened in these last few days, Munich Security Conference, Paris, Saudi Arabia, how did we even get here if we even look at, Trump's comments that he took to social media, essentially blaming Ukraine for everything and blaming Russia for absolutely nothing?
Well, we know that, as Mr. Zelensky has put it, there is a lot of disinformation bubble around Mr. Trump. And that Mr. Trump oftentimes in the past and very recently has been not relying on the credible news, but rather willing to speculate, to go after different hoax theories. So these are definitely the dangerous moments because of the influence such information can take on his decisions. And at the same time, back to Mr. Kellogg, there are hopefully enough people in the U.S. administration, and we know that there are many in the U.S. Congress and overall in the U.S. society that support the westward orientation of Ukraine and, on the other hand, American support for the future of free and whole Europe, which is the big promise not of centuries old, but just decades old Republican administration.
What do you think Ukraine expects from Kellogg's visit, especially after Saudi Arabia?
Well, a sense of clarity, a sense of options that are being considered from the U.S. and, importantly, a strong element of communication, internal communication built on trust. And I think Mr. Kellogg tries hard to provide that, to be meaningful. At the same time, everybody knows that he might be equally important mediator for Ukraine and Russia as much as between Ukraine and the White House top decision makers.
Wojciech, let's talk about this adoption of the 16th package of EU sanctions. What do we know about this?
Well, we know that Hungary is extremely happy. It's communicating that they see it as their success, but it is nevertheless an adoption of a continuous policy of the EU to take harder positions on Russia, to continue limiting Russian strategic options, sanctioning the assets that allow Russia to profit even from the fight, to be anchored in the European economic space. So that's also why Mr. Domański, Minister of Finance of Poland, has declared that is a success. Well, the truth will be seen only in the years to come. Sanctions never take immediate results. We have not seen any immediate results coming from sanctions policy. But what we can say for sure is that it is a good thing. Europe stays united on this key foreign policy agenda that is saying who is the bad guys, who are the bad guys, who we want to punish and seclude from the space that we control. And why do we do it? Because we support Ukraine.
Poland's defense minister said that the country will not send troops to Ukraine despite being a NATO member and neighbor. How do you interpret this decision? What do you think it means for NATO's eastern flank security?
Yeah, I don't know why would we say despite being NATO member. Because we are a NATO member, I'm Polish, we are having already 10% of our troops committed to protecting NATO borders in a situation where these borders are being violated by the special forces of Belarus with support of Russia in sponsoring illegal border crossing that may lead to further incursions, military incursions. So what Poland is doing is already committing in the eastern flank, the critical element of NATO's geography, the personnel, which is only building up in Poland, and we are really increasing the number of troops in Poland. So that's one thing that has to be said. There are two other considerations we need to see. Now, Poland is known to be building up its military, but the key element is the dynamics. We are only growing up, and the troops that have been recruited, that have joined the ranks of professional army service and different other parts of the military service, are now getting the training which is necessary to be fully operational and use the full potential of the military purchases that are being made at the same time. So we are increasing the potential in the critical geographical space, geopolitical space, in which these two elements, just seeing, looking at the numbers, require time, require continuous investment, and require the strategic reserve also on, when we talk about the Baltics, on the direction to secure our key NATO allies. At the same time, Poland is providing logistical support for everyone else in NATO that has more spare, more room to maneuver with the troops to deploy to Ukraine, to deliver the munition, to deploy equipment to Ukraine. And Poland is welcoming all the partners' help in doing so, because that in joint action is guaranteeing the key success. And last point on that, we have to remember that we are being used again in a disinformation war by Russia. Already in 2014, Russian propaganda was trying to give an impression that Poland's support for Ukraine is dictated by some neo-colonial motives. So they are basically projecting their own impressions on Poland regarding the space that once historically indeed was controlled by Poland. Poland is very reluctant to enter into this geography, not to allow Russia, first of all, to fuel further propaganda and allow for potential provocations, acts of sabotage that would sow division between Poland and Ukraine, which would have dramatic consequences, again, for the whole Western alliance in supporting Ukraine, limiting the options on the ground, and that we cannot allow.
Thank you so much, Wojciech Przybylski, Editor-in-Chief of Visegrad Insight, for being with us here on World News Tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And that completes this edition of World News Tonight here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching.